Hello everyone, I welcome you all to day two training session for Republic Day Forensics 2024. Yesterday we revealed the theme to you. It is Highs and Laws of Democracy, which will basically have topics covering all and everything about law in democratic nations. So it could be all the challenges that democratic nations like India face in terms of making and implementing laws. Now we'll move forward towards what original oratory is. I think that's something I've already covered, but I want to make sure that you all are also aware of how to make your speeches. So even before you're going to go ahead and draft your speech, there are a couple of things and couple of steps before that, because preparing a draft is literally the fifth step. Before that, there are four more steps that you're supposed to do. And then even after you're done preparing your draft, there's so much more than that you're supposed to do after that as well, right? So how to prepare speech? So the first thing that will happen is you will get your sub theme today by the end of today's session. And based on the sub theme or prompt that is given to you, you're supposed to research. Now, what researching means is that you're going to go ahead and read articles, books, journals, general websites, or like watch videos, anything and everything that you can find and watch and read with respect to that theme. You are going to do that. So logically speaking, most of the times whenever you're given a topic, you should at least spend like one day entirely in order to just explore the topic as to what it is all about, what happens with respect to it, what are the related concepts, etc., etc. So I don't want you to come up with like, hey, this is the sub theme, I exactly know what topic I'm going to cover, because then you're just biased without having a proper nuance and understanding of why you want to take the topic. So I first want you all to research well on the prompt that is given to you, and then go ahead. So once you're done researching, you know much more about the topic that you did initially, but you'll also have an understanding of what exactly is your I what exactly is your area of interest. For example, a large chunk of times when, let's say, your teachers give you an assignment and you continuously read about it, you probably don't find everything interesting, but there's this one part of a particular like assignment or project that you absolutely love, right? So that particular part or that particular area of interest is something that you're going to go ahead and and explore more. So what it looks like is you researched everything, you identified that one area of interest, and then you went ahead and narrowed down your interest with that particular topic. So what it looks like is you have A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z number of topics within that sub themes. You identify A to be your area of interest, and then you'll go ahead and research only about A. So you'll go ahead and narrow down your research, and you'll only research about that particular topic under the prompt that is being given to you. Now, the fourth thing that you're supposed to do is, once you have narrowed down the research and you're continuously exploring more about that, you'll probably find out and understand as to A, why is that a particular key issue, and what are the impacts associated with it. So, like even when you narrow down your research, there are a couple of other things that you need to recognize with respect to that topic. For example, this is how this topic works, or this is how people think about this topic. This is how are the effects of this topic, or this is what led to this happening in the first place. So why, how, every single thing is something that you should be able to analyze with respect to that topic that you identified. Now, the fifth thing, once you have completely read the entire and read and understood the entire idea that you have identified, you'll go in and prepare a draft of your speech based on the structure, which means in order for you to do the fifth step, you will have to listen carefully to the entire session, because I'm going to tell you as to what structure is, and then how exactly can you make your structure better, and what are the details and content you're supposed to put in exactly in the structure as well. Now, I understand that sometimes when people tell you that, hey, this is the introduction, this is the body, this is the conclusion, your speech is likely to look very robotic, because it's just like a set frame of words and set frame of rules that are being given to you, and it's just impossible for you to make it more like organic without proper transition. So once you're done making your draft, and once you're done with filling the content with the structure that is given to you, I want you to also figure out as to how you can make sure that there is smooth transition. For example, let's say you're done with your introduction, and then you're going to move forward with the body. Now, I don't want you to move forward with literally no link in between. So there has to be some way in order for you to have good transition from introduction to body, and there and from body to conclusion as well. So this is how that will function, which is why you have to figure out as to how you would be transitioning. Now, on the top of that, there are multiple other things that you need to like figure out, right? Because it's not just about the transition from introduction to body, but it's also internally, right? Because in your body, let's say you are using three particular arguments. In order for you to have good, you also need to have good transitions from argument one to argument two, and then stuff like that. Now, that's about transition. Now, once the transition is over, the draft is over, you'll go forward and understand as to what is going to be your tone of delivery. I want you to note that oftentimes your tones aren't necessarily going to be the same. Let's say it's not always going to be serious. It's all not always going to be empathetic. It's not always going to be, let's say, fearful, pessimistic. That's something that you have to identify by yourself. Obviously, there's going to be a general tone that you have to identify, and then a specific tone that you would be using for different points and times of your speech. You also have to figure out as to when you're supposed to make your tone higher, when you're supposed to make your tone lower, and so on and so forth. So that's something that you will have to also figure out. For example, and specifically for delivery, what you need to remember is, let's say, if you're talking about deaths, if you're talking about sadness, like suffering of people, probably make sure that your tone is down and your tone is basically trying to be empathetic. For example, if you're talking about, and if you're trying to encourage people, your tone should probably be extremely firm, or extremely encouraging in the first place. So you know how different different tones basically express different emotions, and I want you to recognize that each part of your speech probably has different emotions, and you have to recognize all of these emotions. It shouldn't be robotic. The last three things are very important. The first one is remember your speech and time it. I want you all to recognize as to what your time is and stick to the time limit. I'll tell you specifically why you're supposed to stick to the time limit. One, because it's marked. So if you go over time or if you go extremely under time, you're going to be down marked for that. But secondly, I want you to actually stick to the time limit in order for you to have good discipline with respect to your speech habits. So remember the speech, time it, and I then want you to go ahead and eliminate the repetitions and extra material that you have. So go ahead, and if you think there's something that is, let's say, extra or something that you're repeating. So a good thing that I do is, let's say if I have to give a speech which is basically by hearted, I'll record my speech, I'll listen to the speech, and then I'll see, oh, there's something I already talked about in my first minute. Why am I repeating it, right? So probably while tapping, you did not recognize that you were repeating something, or like you were making similar points. So when you listen to them, your brain functions better, and your brain is able to recognize what is exactly the repetition. So at that point of time, just remove that. So lastly, I mean, your speech is ready, but you continue and rehearse your speech as much as you can. So this is how you would prepare your speech. I can see there are two questions in the chat box. So people were asking that, hey, my qualifier is on 21st. You can leave the meeting right now. You're not supposed to, and it's not mandatory for you to stay in the meeting and listen to the training session, because it's anyways going to happen for you from 18th. But if you want to stay back, you can feel free to stay back and listen to it. Again, Dharmik, I have put a number on chat box. Please mention on the number as to what exactly your issue is, so that we can deal with that. With that, are there any questions specific to how to prepare speech? Obviously, I'm going to go forward with structure next. So any questions, no questions? If no questions, I'm going to move forward. I'll assume that there are no questions. Let's go forward then. So structure, this is something that I already gave you yesterday, but I just wanted to want you to have a proper look on this again. Introduction, context, body, anecdote, conclusion, and closing statement. I want you to note that anecdotes specifically are not always supposed to come after body. It could literally be a part of your introduction, your context, your body. It could be a part of literally any of those elements of your structure. It's just a part and component that I wanted to explain, which is why I just put it. But anecdotes can be used anywhere throughout your speech, but obviously not again and again. It could be just once. Yes, Ria, the speech has to be persuasive. Great. Moving forward with the introduction then. what is the aim of introduction is something that you need to remember in order to actually frame a good introduction. There are two broad aims. The first one is you need to get attention of the viewers. And secondly, you need to tell viewers as to what exactly they can expect from your speech. It could basically be like, hey, this is your introduction should basically give them a hint of probably this is what you're going to talk about. It shouldn't be so vague, so like it shouldn't be so it shouldn't basically create suspense per se, because if you continue to make suspense, and that's something not that's something which does not work in speeches particularly. So you're not supposed to make suspense, you're supposed to make clarity, which means give them and tell them that what exactly are they expecting, which means that this is the part where you're making your or topic that you have identified clear to the public, because nobody knows your topic, which is why introduction becomes really key and important in original oratory. But apart from you trying to portray and reflect what your topic is, there are a couple of things that you need to remember. One, you have to start with a good opening statement, and the opening statement could be a hook statement or a rhetoric. Now, rhetoric could be a powerful statement or a quote, which is being said by somebody who's like a very known person. Your opening statement would also be something which is a mind-blowing statistic, which could basically be like, did you know these many number of people suffer from a particular disease, and this is what the issue is. So when you tell them, let's say these many number of people are impacted by it, or let's say if you tell them like a very mind-blowing statistic, I think that's something which like immediately grabs attention of the viewers. So that's also one of the like aim of it. But lastly is rhetorical question. Now rhetorical questions are basically something that you would ask people to think about, but that doesn't mean that you're expecting an answer on the spot. So you're saying, would you rather do this or that? But that's a rhetorical question, but you don't expect the audience to come forward and answer to that, right? So you can also start your speech with a rhetorical question. But the idea at the end of the day is you should never start your speech by saying, as you all know, because if we all know what you're going to say, I'm not interested in what you're going to say. So you're supposed to make sure that whatever statements you're making in your speech are creating interest in people. And even if that's something that people do not know about, it's your responsibility to make sure that people are at the end of your speech aware about it. So that's the whole point of introduction plus original oratory, actually. Is there any question specifically for introduction then? Obviously, at the end of the day, you're supposed to keep it concise as in like keep it short, because I don't want you to go on and on with your introduction for, let's say, 1 minute, because probably you only have like 3 minutes for some categories. Yes, Anoushka.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if it is a good idea to start with a quote.
Yes, I mean, that's also one of the ways how you started, right? So good idea to start with a quote.
All right.
Okay, moving, are there any like other questions? Yes, Devanshi.
According to you, what is the best way to start a speech?
I have done two things. I generally either start with a very like a hook statement, or like which could be a quote as well. Or I also love when I start with a great statistic. So something that will blow my mind, something that I did not know. That basically makes me feel like, oh, I don't know anything, and therefore I need to listen to you. So that's a very good way to just like grab attention. I also think that even if you're using something which is very common in people and people know about it, you shouldn't start it with saying, as we all know. But it could be something which is very popular, or, even if it's like a meme, it's okay for you to start with that. So even if you want, and specifically, and like the different, a very unique way that I've seen people do it, that I still struggle with, is, starting their entire speech with a sarcastic tone or a humorous tone, because people love humor and people love sarcasm, which means that if you want to start with it and if you think you're good at it, probably start like do that, because I think at the end of the day, I think how you are going to introduce is very dependent on you as a personality, and it has to be very specific and personalized to you. But according to me, those are the two ways how I do it. We need to mention our names. Yes, you're supposed to mention your name, but that's not an introduction. That's before you start your time. So you can say, hi, my name is Niyati, and then before starting your speech, you have to say 3 to 1 starting my speech, and then you can start your speech with introduction of the speech. All right. Then moving forward with context. Now, context is, again, there are two aims for the context. One is, why did you choose this topic and what is the background of the research? Now, the reason as to why this is important is one of the very important things about original origin is that it's not just about you figuring out a topic, but also you convincing the people that this is the most crucial topic and issue that exists with respect to this theme, which means you have to justify why you have taken this topic. But that also means that at times people won't know about your topic at all, which is why you will have to give them some amount of explanation to the background of why this topic exists, what's happening in the status quo, what's happening in the current events with respect to that issue, and so on and so forth. So what exactly comes under context then is background of the issue, explanation to the basic ideas that you would probably refer back to with respect to that particular topic, which means that if you are, let's say, taking a topic of open prison systems per se, do you know what open prisons are? Did you know that something like open prison exists? I want you to go and Google it right now. Google it and
What did you say?
open prisons. Google it and find out for me as to what open prisons are. Yes, Swara.
Yeah, so open prisons are basically prisons where the jailers or like the prisoners are entrusted in like a particular perimeter of like with security, of course, but they're not locked up in their cells.
Yes. So if you were to take that topic, you would go ahead and explain what A, open prisons are. B, can anyone also tell me which country has open prisons? Does India have open prison?
India does. It has 22 open prisons.
Nice. So you would give some context to India, but also which country do you think has the most number of open prisons? Yes, Sakit, Ram.
Ma'am, I would feel the US, ma'am, because there's lots of prisons there, ma'am. Surely there'll be lots of open ones as well, ma'am.
Is Sakit Ram's guess correct?
No, I don't think so. I think it's Finland. I don't know though. I think so.
So I also don't have particular knowledge on which country has, but I think the logic that Saket uses also was in my head. So I was also thinking US for some reason. But yeah, makes sense. So you would also give as to how many countries have open prison systems, what are the issues that probably exist underlying open prisons and so on and so forth. So and then you can probably give a personal relevance. Now, I want you to note one thing that is very important here. Personal relevance is equal to anecdote. If you want, you can use anecdote here, but if you want to use anecdote somewhere else, you can do it as well. Now, there are two things to note. Anecdote does not have to be specifically something that happened to you, even if the concept of anecdote is something that is your personal experience, which means that, let's say, if it is about like crimes, you don't have to particularly tell your experience with crime. You can tell about a small story where you're picturizing something happening. For example, this small girl in a town who was, let's say, forced to like probably forced to be a thief because of the um kind of because of the kind of issues that she was facing, because of her family issues, because of not having enough resources. So this time it's not you, but it's a story about a small girl, and then you're picturizing as to why did she like end up committing crimes in the first place. So it could be just small emotional story about some like a criminal that ended up becoming a serial killer, or let's say like literally anyone, right? A person or from a vulnerable community which has been discriminated for the entirety of their lives, and so on and so forth. So personal relevance does not always have to be your personal relevance. It could also be an emotional story. Now, in your context, again, I'm repeating it again. If you want to use anecdote, only use it in one part and not everywhere, because you're just losing time and your content will be bad if you do that. So highlight relevant timelines and statistics if you have any, explain the problem that you identified, and you're also supposed to give a brief preview, which means that what exactly can I expect from your speech, which is basically you giving, I'm going to cover 3 areas today. 1, ABC, 2, CD, E, and then 3, F, G, H, right? So you will just give them a brief idea as to what your like case split is, and then you'll move forward. So context is you going ahead and giving context as to why you chose the topic, what is your topic, why is that problem existing, and then any kind of like basic explanation that you think you will need to give to the people. Yes, Sonakshi, that's correct. Okay, let's move forward to the body. Now, how many of y'all debate here? Like, I just want to raise a hand. Ria debates, Amira debates, Asma debates, Swara debates. Okay, great. So can anyone, so there are 11 people who are, okay, a lot of people debate. Yes, great. Because this is going to be helpful here in the speech. Even if it's a speech event, your debating skills become really important. 2 reasons. One, you're argumentating because you're proving as to why your point and why your topic is the most important, crucial issue. So in this regard, if you have 3 points, you're supposed to bifurcate those 3 points in this manner. So first, so your point is going to be your assertion, that's the heading. You will explain that point, and then you will give some statistics and studies related to that point. And that's how each of your arguments are going to happen. So if you want, you can use 2 arguments. If you want, you can use 3 arguments. That's basically dependent on how much time you have in your speech. So if it is 3-minute speech, I think 1 or 2 arguments. So if it's a 3-minute speech, 3 arguments is fine. But if you want to use 2, so it depends on what is the extent of analysis you're giving. So if you're using 3 arguments, like reasonable and decent amount of analysis is okay. But if it is a 6-minute speech, I obviously expect more analysis, more evidences. So just remember that I think just have like a good content and like good mark of 3 arguments in at least all speeches, and then prove your arguments. Now, one thing that's important here is obviously your explanation is the analysis, your logic to why what you're saying is true is your analysis. Evidence could be your examples, general statistics, general studies that you have figured out. For example, according to the study of Government of India, XYZ happened. According to the Prison Institute, this was the study. I mean, I'm just like quoting random things now. But just remember, like if you're quoting studies, who was the institute or who was the center or authority that conducted the study, something that you should mention in your speech as well, because this is really important for you to establish credibility of your speech. But something that you're supposed to do here, and I find it very interesting, is because there's nobody against you, you're the one preempting any counter arguments that people can give. For example, you have to consider the counter arguments and then also tell us to why the counter argument is less important and less persuasive. For example, remember yesterday I gave you an example of if the sub-theme is about all the challenges that courtrooms in India face, and the topic that you identify is backlog of cases. I could basically use the counter argument this way. Some people might argue that there are bigger issues than backlog of cases. For example, inefficient legal aid. However, I still believe the reason as to why backlog of cases is more important than, let's say, having inefficient legal aid is because XYZ. So what you're doing here is you understand that some people might find other areas of the topic more interesting than what you found, which is why it's also important for you to address why like the counter of what you found is untrue or less persuasive. This does not always have to be logistical or statistical. It could also be simply why you think that, like why in terms of your belief, it's more important. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to quote things like, but I believe this is more important without any reason, because again, beliefs are still supposed to be something that is supported by a reason. Is there any question for your body? Last thing that I wanted to mention here is, let's say if you have 3 arguments, the first argument you'll mention in the same structure of assertion, analysis, evidence. And then when you're moving to the second argument, you'll obviously link the first argument with the second argument for a good transition. So again, transition becomes very key here. Devanshi, what's your question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask that when you are saying about these arguments of assertion, analysis, and evidence, can you give a slight example of like what do you exactly mean by that?
Yeah. Let's say if I'm saying I'll use the same again topic because I think that's something that I've already told you. So let's say if I'm saying that backlog of cases is the biggest challenge, the reason as to why I believe that backlog of cases is the biggest challenge is because I think it reduces the productivity of courts. And this is my assertion. The statement where I say it reduces productivity of court is my assertion. And then I'll explain as to how it goes ahead and reduces productivity of courts. My analysis could be logical and and I can give you some examples for it. My analysis could be the reason as to why productivity of courts decreases is because of number of cases that are pending per judge, but that also means that the working hour for judges are extremely high. That also means that the ability of a human to actually deal with that number of cases reduces. That also means that when you're overburdened with the cases, your ability to actually meritocratically with your ability to deal with them with meritocracy is extremely low. And I could also say this also leads to multiple other things. For example, even if let's say you're dealing with a large number of cases, your pay is still low, which means that it would lead to you going ahead and like taking bribes, which again reduces the ability of any individual to get justice. So that's going to be one analysis. And then I can give evidence of how many, go ahead and Google this, how many number of cases are pending per judge in India, per judge. Or just find out as to how many cases one judge is supposed to hear every day. So Ria says 10 to 30. According to my Google search, it says 33 per judge. So this in of itself means that you can't even give like one particular hour per case. So this shows that the amount of like attention that you can give to one case is extremely low. So yeah, this is how you would give evidence. And this is how you would make one argument. I hope that's clear, whoever asked that question. That was a very good question. Now, moving forward to anecdotes. The idea behind anecdotes is to have personal touch, which means you can give a personal story to connect with the audience emotionally. Now you're supposed to make sure that like the story has to be short. Now I don't want you to go on and on with the story and give full details of the story. Obviously, take the parts where you think you can make the audience relate to, but also make the audience picturize that scene, which makes it much better and much impactful. Now, this story can be literally in any tone. For example, it could be a serious story, heartfelt story, humorous story, emotional story, any of that. You can choose it. But what's more important with respect to using a story in speech is to make sure that your story is well integrated in the speech. It shouldn't look like a misplaced element in your speech. But also, I want to make a note here. Anecdotes does not have to be only in forms of stories. If you love poems, you can also add a poem anecdote in your speech, and then you can probably recite that poem in between. For example, most of the time when you give speeches, on like whenever you have public speaking opportunities, what becomes extremely important is a large chunk of times I used to like start my speeches not for original oratory, but like general conventional speeches with a good poem. And I used to also end it with good poem because I love poems. So if you like poems, because there were some people who also like signed up for slam poetry, I think it's your chance to use your liberty and also add poems in between. That when I say poems, that does not mean you can use more than 5 lines, because I think 5 lines are enough. So yeah, that's with respect to anecdotes. Are there any questions? If no questions, I'll move forward. Now, after anecdotes, conclusion becomes important. Conclusion is obviously after all the stories and after all the stuff that you told people, you have to give a quick recap. You'll have to summarize your main arguments and give a memorable closing thought. I'll explain that in a bit. Anushka, what's your question?
Yeah. Is it recommended to start with a poem? Like maybe like use 2, 3 lines from a poem and start with that.
I mean, I would actually use poem similarly the way I would use a quote by a person. So whenever I used to like use poems, those poems used to be the ones that people actually were aware of and were by, let's say, very amazing poets. But like in case if you think that you have written something extremely amazing that would catch the attention of people, go ahead and do that as well. It's not recommended per se as me saying that, oh, you know what, you should only use poems, but I think it's another very impactful way. Yes.
Right, okay.
Okay, so summarize your main arguments in the conclusion. What did you tell and why what you said is important? Lastly, give a memorable closing thought. Now, closing thought could be you making people think about what you said and implement. So, for example, I say, if you were to choose between dying immediately or suffering for years, what would you prefer? Can anyone tell me as to why this sentence is relevant with respect to all the backlog of cases that I was giving? Like the reference, Devanshi. Or Ria.
As you mentioned that every case does not get its like adequate amount of time, so justice is not like it's not provided in a way like it's not benefiting the people. So you can either be like and since the cases is such a backlog of cases, you could be suffering for years under the injustice and not being like tried in court and all that stuff, or you could be like dying, or you could say you could be dying immediately because number one, like justice is not given properly because the number of the excessive amount of cases is causing injustice, as you said in the first session.
Yeah.
Or it could be that you're dying without any justice because of the backlog of cases.
That's good explanation. Yes, that's what I thought obviously as well. Madhur, what's your explanation? Do you have something different to add?
Yes, I would just add a quote there like justice delayed is justice denied. So we can phrase it like that.
Yeah, I think that's adequate. The last thing then is closing statement. Closing statement is also a part of your conclusion per se, but that's the end of your conclusion. So closing statement is a closing remark and final call of action. So after all of what you analyzed and told people that this is a big issue you need to act upon, you need to end your speech by telling what you want people to do in order to solve the problem and how exactly people can contribute. So what is the final call of action? And then go ahead and end with a very memorable sentence. Now, with respect to what could be your memorable sentence, is also all the rules for introduction are applied. So, for example, rhetorical statement, rhetorical question, a quote, anything could be the case, but something that is relevant at that particular point of time after you've asked for final call of action is something you need to remember. So, this is what is going to be the structure for your original oratory. Are there any questions then? This is the judging criteria. You are going to be judged on 3 criteria: matter, manner, method. Matter means research, statistics, relevance to the topic, creativity, originality, analysis, and content. Then manner is delivery, engagement with the audience, language, pace, articulation, persuasiveness. Method is organization of structure, time management, transitions, placements, and overall impact to the audience. Is there any question with respect to the judging criteria? All of them are equally weighted. Okay, no questions then? That's the end from my side. I'm actually going to release the topics now. So are you all ready for the sub-themes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to make just one announcement before I go forward with the theme. When you look at the slide, it's going to look a little intimidating but it's actually very simple. So think of it as a very poetic way of forming topics. So don't get intimidated because it's very long, because the idea is very small and simple. We just wanted you to have more idea of why the topic was made, which is why it's kind of longer than you would see normal topics to be, but don't get intimidated in general. So I'm going to start with the topic for, so the sub-theme for juniors is striving for justice in every sphere of life, a call to act. This is the sub-theme. Now you may ask what the sub-theme is. So the prompt given to you is, in our daily lives, justice goes beyond courtrooms. It's found in the fairness, empathy, and respect we show to one another. At home, justice means equal respect and understanding. At workspace, it's seen in fair opportunities and ethical leadership. Within communities, justice fosters social cohesion by addressing inequalities. Justice on these smaller scales forms the foundation of a society that values inclusivity and shared responsibilities. It's a call for each of us to contribute to a world where fairness is not just a legal concept, but an integral part of our daily interactions and relationships. So what this basically means is that justice, when you listen the word justice, it's just the idea of fairness at the end of the day. But that fairness is not only with respect to crimes, with respect to civil issues or in courts. It's just simple basic interaction that you have. The kind of interaction that you have with your friends. Are you treating all of your friends equally? Or are you respecting all of your friends' opinions equally? Are your parents treating all the kids equally? Or are the teachers treating all of the kids equally? All of which becomes like the small interaction that you have in your life, which becomes really important for the society to be a just and peaceful society at the end of the day. Which means fairness as a concept is not too alien to any of us, and it is inherently a thing given to human beings by birth. Which means the topic and the speech that you're going to make is going to be, what can an individual do to promote fairness in society? Now, I don't want you to tell me these are the laws that you can implement, because I want you to tell me the smallest thing that happens with relationships that you can improve in order to make the society much more equitable. So what can an individual do in order to make society much more fair? Are there any questions? And this is for junior category. Garv?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, this is the topic for 15 qualifiers. 15 Jan
13th qualifier. 13th qualifiers, yes.
Okay, ma'am. So 21st Jan qualifiers
The
topic will
topic
be
is going to be
different.
different, yes. Amara, do you have a question?
Oh.
Okay, I'm assuming that this is clear because it's just you trying to find out as to, what we individuals can do in order to promote fairness in society. That's as simple as that. Moving forward is middle category. The sub-theme for middle category is rethinking punishment paradigms, shaping a crime-free society. The reason as to why this particular topic has been chosen is because there are growing questions on redefining and reevaluating the traditional punitive measures in law. In the legal framework, there are multiple theories of punishment that constitute a fundamental aspect of legal philosophy, shaping the principles that guide justice systems' response to criminal behavior. For example, retributive theory, deterrence theory, rehabilitation theory, restorative justice theory, etc. Identify one each theory of punishment that you think is adequate for achieving a peaceful society in India. Now, all of which is explanation, but the idea that you're supposed to see in order to answer in your speech is, which theory of punishment shall be opted by Indian criminal justice system? Now, I don't want to actually give you context of what theory is applicable right now and how India goes ahead with punishments, but just to give you a small explanation to what these theories are. Again, small explanation because I actually want you to read about these theories because it's actually very interesting. For example, retributive theories are basically eye for an eye. So if somebody basically goes ahead and kills somebody, the punishment for this person should also be that person being killed. So that's how retributive theory looks like. For deterrence theory, deterrence is like, hey, in order for us to punish people, we should make sure that the punishment acts as a form of deterrence to the society, which means people should be fearful of the punishment, which is why the crimes in the world are going to be reducing. With respect to rehabilitation theory, it means that, listen, yes, people have committed crime, but at the end of the day, we need to rehabilitate them in the society and reintegrate them in the society, which means, sure, people are probably serial killers, but let's try to find out as to why they became serial killers, and then we'll basically rehabilitate them and send them to, let's say, rehabilitation centers, reform them, and then integrate them back to the society. Restorative justice is to make sure that if any harm has been done because of a crime, you will try to restore that harm and you will try to make good the loss. So that's restorative justice theory. Now, based on all the kinds of theories that exist with respect to punishment, how should India punish people for the crimes that are committed in India, and why you think that's the best theory? Are there any questions for this? Yes, Ishita.
So I have a question. You said there's going to be 3 rounds, right? So
Yeah.
throughout the 3 rounds, you have to stick with the one theory that we've chosen from the beginning, right? We can't
Yes,
change.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ria?
In the speech, we have to just explain like the points which you gave earlier. Just choose a theory. For example, if we choose retributive theory, we choose a theory and talk about it and persuade the audience why that particular theory should be adequate for achieving peaceful society, right?
Correct. Yes. But also remember that these are just examples. There are more punishment theories that are existing in the world. So if you want to use any other theories that are not there in the slide, go ahead and feel free to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions then? I'll assume no questions. I'll move to senior category sub-theme. The senior category sub-theme is legal reshaping, pioneering a transformed societal framework. The reason as to why this topic exists is because societal reforms are capable of instigating transformative waves of change. Identify and address one key area requiring reform, such as education, criminal justice system, healthcare, environmental policies, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, data privacy, intellectual property rights, etc. Discuss the most crucial issue and its potential impact of the reform on marginalized communities, and advocate for a collective commitment to building a more equitable and just society. Your oratory should persuade the listeners about existence of such issue and must inspire them to reflect on their roles in contributing a positive change. So the idea is you're supposed to answer in your speech as to how can we reform law in context of changing society. I want to give you more understanding about this topic. The idea is society keeps changing and there are different new concepts that keeps coming up. Now, with respect to that, there should also be laws. And how exactly do you think we can transform laws? But also you have to find out one particular issue with respect to that. You're not supposed to go ahead and, let's say, take anything and everything that has to be changed in society or that has to be changed with respect to law. Identify one issue, how can law solve it, and what kinds of regulations exist in order to solve it, is the idea. So, any question on this? Are there any questions? I will assume that you've understood it properly. On the chat box, there is a question on, can you give a sample or an example topic that we can use from the subtopic? Yes, actually. So the sample examples are actually in your prompt. I want to read your prompts like multiple times. For example, in this one, you can figure out that such as education, criminal justice system, healthcare, environmental policies are all hints for you to find out what can be changed in terms of law and which area. Similarly, in the last topic in which theories of punishments were given, you can also obviously use examples of any of the theories, for example, retributive theory, deterrence theory, rehabilitation theories. Now, in the theme that was given to you for juniors, you can anyway see there are three kinds of relationships where fairness can be promoted, and then you can choose either of them. But again, these are just examples. The world is much bigger than that. You can anyways identify anything and everything that comes under that ambit. So yeah, examples and samples anyways in the prompt. You're supposed to identify one for yourself. Yes, so what modification is required for that particular area and why that's a big issue if we don't modify law according to that. Yes, that's what it is, Niyati. I hope that's clear. Then I'm gonna stop sharing and stop recording.